out there and had a chance to meet with Professor Gicheru and some of her colleagues to see the university a bit. And the interview was later published by Neil Gorenflow and shareable. But I think that the Kenyan experience is something that has come back to me, at least, quite a bit over the course of working on platform co-ops, in seeing this tradition in its longevity, in its scale, from a different perspective. And there's been an ongoing call both here this weekend, last year, and throughout this process to change the geography of the economy that we're talking about. You know, so often we've seen a very, very centralized online economy centered on Silicon Valley, and similarly on centers modeled often after Silicon Valley, Silicon Alley, Silicon fill in the blank, right? Even I recently met with the mayor of Mondragon, right, the capital of worker cooperatives, and she said, we're basically the Silicon Valley of cooperatives. I was like, oh my God, right? I think we're, there's a great deal of urgency to change the geography, to integrate the global north and the global south in the kind of economy that we're building. And that's why I'm really grateful to be able to have this conversation in this setting tonight with Professor Gicheru. So I wonder if we could start with, okay, let's both have our mics really close to us. Is this okay? Can you hear, is this better? Yeah. Okay, so let's keep it close. Maybe, yeah, take it off. And yeah. Could you start by telling us a bit about how you first encountered the cooperative model in your life?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nathan, for that question, because I came to cooperatives when I was very young in my life, because as I was growing up, I grew up in a family where my dad was a member of a cooperative, a coffee cooperative. And therefore, I got used to working for the cooperative, because when we come from school, we would deliver the coffee to the factory, and we got used to working in the factory, because that time there were not many employees in the cooperative. So we used to do communal work, and therefore, like on Saturdays when you are not in school, we would take the coffee, be involved in the selection of the coffee, and then we would leave the coffee beans to dry for marketing. And that is the time I came to be exposed in cooperatives. So that time I really didn't know much about what it was about, but by coincidence, when I finished my university education, my first employment was in the ministry in charge of cooperatives. And that is the time now I came to understand what the institutions where we were delivering the coffee were about, because now I came to practice cooperatives during my time working in the Ministry of Cooperatives.
Now, not every country in the world has a ministry of cooperatives. Can you tell us a bit about how cooperatives came to hold a pretty tremendous segment of the Kenyan economy?
Yeah, now in Kenya, cooperatives, first of all, let me say cooperation is as old as history, because we were a colony of the British, and even before the British came, our people were already cooperating. For example, if it was planting time, you would find that people would come together, and then they go and and work in one, we call them shambas, or in one plot. So today they all go and work together in one plot, and then another day they go to the next person. Instead of everybody doing their work alone, I think there was solidarity in working together. So cooperation is very old in our history, and I think it is part of us. So when the British, during the colonial time, the first cooperatives, the modern cooperatives, because even the others were like form of cooperatives, although they were task-based, then the 1908 is when the first cooperative was registered, what we would call the modern cooperatives, based on the Rochdale pioneers, whereby we were talking about the cooperative principles and values. So in 1908, a number of cooperatives were registered, dealing particularly with coffee, with dairy, with pyrethrum and cotton. These are crops that we called the cash crops, because there was interest in growing these crops by the British, and therefore they were grown, and our people were working and providing labor for these cooperatives. So that time there was no cooperative law in Kenya, but we were using the British business legislation, which had been adopted in India, and therefore we continued until 1931, when the first cooperative law or an ordinance was promulgated. And during this time, we could be able to register cooperatives using our own law. But even as at 1931, the Africans had not been allowed to participate in the modern cooperatives. They were still providing labor until 1945, when the people were allowed to form cooperatives and also grow cash crops, because before that, the coffee was mainly grown by the Europeans. So 1945, the people of Kenya could now grow their coffee and be able to market that coffee, and another law was established that time in 1945. So that scenario continued, and when we got independence in 1963, we had various government ministries, and one of the ministries was a ministry in charge of cooperatives, because the government of Kenya had seen what cooperatives could do. People were already organized, and therefore the government found it easy to deliver their promise to the people as we became independent through the cooperatives. And so 1966, the first cooperative law was now promulgated, that was now independent of the British, and which was drawn or promulgated with the participation of the people of Kenya. So we had this ministry. That is how we have the Ministry of Cooperatives, and the law of the Ministry of Cooperatives was that time to supervise the cooperatives. I would like to say that at that time, cooperatives were not really formed the way they should, because they are supposed to come from top down. But this time, they came from, they're supposed to come from bottom up. The members are supposed to come together, identify their needs, and form the cooperative. But this time, because the government was in a hurry to deliver the mandate after independence, you find that they were top down. And therefore, the ministry was to supervise the cooperatives. They had employed supervisors to supervise cooperatives. And because not a lot was known about cooperatives, that is also how we established an institution dedicated to cooperative education and training. Because we as the Africans, we didn't know very much about cooperatives, so we had to teach people. We had to teach especially the board members. We had to teach the employees of these cooperatives. We had to teach the members, through member education programs, and therefore it became imperative that if cooperatives were to grow, we needed an institution dedicated to provide these trainings. So around 1952, even before we had independence, is when we started the first school of East African cooperation. And this, we had the 3 East African countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And all of them, we had the institution in Kenya, whereby we separated after independence because all the countries got independence around 1963, 1967. So the other countries went to their home countries and they established their own training institutions there for cooperatives. And then Kenya, we established ours, which was that time the Cooperative College of Kenya. It was a middle-level college offering certificates and diplomas. But as we continued, there was a lot of diversity and complexity as the cooperatives grew, and we realized that diploma programs alone were not sufficient to man these cooperatives. And therefore, that is how we upgraded our institution to university level to be able to upgrade the programs from diploma to degree. Now we are offering degrees in cooperative business and also master's programs through the university where I said I work.
Thank you so much. I think it's a fascinating history because on the one hand, it was cooperation was used as a tool of colonialism in a race-based caste system, and then became a tool of independence, and then meanwhile became a means of education, of business education. Can you tell us a bit about what it means to teach cooperative business? How is that different from teaching other kinds of business? Now, and I should say too that Professor Gicheru is the director of the Institute of Cooperative Development now, and is the former principal, correct, of the university of the Cooperative University of Kenya. So she's been working as a leader in this field for a long time.
Yes, so thank you very much. Yes, I would say that there is some difference when we teach the normal business programs so when we teach the cooperative-based programs. Because cooperative-based programs are very rich because they can serve as the normal business programs would do, but at the same time, we are teaching them the philosophy of cooperatives. We teach them the philosophy, we teach them the rich history of how cooperatives were started, so that borrowing from that, they can understand how cooperatives benefited the people, especially during that time when we had industrial revolution. People were very poor, and they found it beneficial to come together and determine their own destiny through self-help. And therefore, we teach them that history, which is quite rich, and then we teach them about the values and principles of cooperation, which we do not teach in the other business programs. So when you look at the kind of training using those values of equity, equality, solidarity, self-help, self-responsibility, then you find this is a very human training. It is what actually the humans would like to see happen in their lives and in their businesses. So the cooperative programs are very rich as compared to the other business programs.
Can you say a bit about what are the dominant forms of cooperation in Kenya now? What types of cooperatives are leading the sector? What types are emerging? And how is the sector organized?
Yeah, now our cooperatives are organized in what we would call a 4-tier system, where we have a primary cooperative, that is the smallest organ, whose members are the individual members. So the primary cooperatives also come together and form secondary cooperatives. And these secondary cooperatives were based on political divisions or the districts. We call them the districts. You know, the district boundaries that were the political boundaries. so that in every political boundary, then you have a union to pull together their resources so that all the primary cooperatives in that district would then be affiliated to the union. Then from the union, we have at national level what we call the national cooperative organizations. And these are organized by sectors. So for example, if we have the dairy sector, all the dairy cooperatives are organized and they affiliate to the, we call it the Kenya Cooperative Creameries. So the Kenya Cooperative Creameries will now service all the dairy cooperatives, and that way they are able to do the processing of the milk products so that they can add value rather than every cooperative doing their value addition on their own. Then you come to coffee. We also have a countrywide cooperative that is based on coffee, and they assist in the processing of coffee. This, we call it the Kenya Planters Cooperative Union. And therefore, it helps to organize cooperatives this way. But cooperatives in Kenya, I would say you can find cooperatives in all sectors of the economy. We have in agriculture, like I have mentioned, dairy, coffee, cotton, pyrethrum. All of these are organized in cooperatives. Then in the financial sector, we have savings and credit cooperatives. I think what we call credit unions in other countries. And these have served the Kenyan people. It is the biggest sector. The financial sector, cooperative sector, is the biggest sector with about 5,000 registered cooperatives as opposed to the 15,000 registered cooperatives in all the other sectors, which include housing, handicraft, mining. You call it any activity that we do in Kenya, you'll find that cooperatives are involved, including the transport sector. And we know roughly about 8 million people in Kenya are members of these cooperatives cutting across all these sectors. And you'd find when we talk about 8 billion individual members, we are talking about particularly the heads of the families, especially the agricultural cooperatives, because for you to be a member, you must be owning a piece of land in the area of operation where the cooperative is. And so, even though we are saying 8 million, the cooperatives does not only serve the member, but the whole family. And therefore, if you estimate that an average family in Kenya is about maybe 4 people, you'll find that about 2 million of our people have something to do with the cooperatives. They benefit from cooperatives either directly or indirectly. So the cooperatives in Kenya have a lot of impact in the economy. In fact, statistics say that about 45% of our GDP comes through cooperatives, which is a very significant percentage compared that it is just from one sector. So you'd find that cooperatives, is a way of life in Kenya. Almost every other person you meet, they belong to a cooperative. If they don't belong to a cooperative, their parents belong to a cooperative, and therefore they benefit. We have educated our children through cooperatives, especially the savings and credit cooperatives, where you save money, and then you are able to get a loan 3 times of your savings. And the advantage of this is that you can get this without collateral because we guarantee one another. So if I'm a member and I want to get a loan, then my colleague members will guarantee me. And because of that trust, we trust one another, we guarantee one another, and therefore we are able to benefit from loans. And of course, the interest rate for the cooperative loans compared with the banks are very reasonable. So members are able to borrow and pay without any problems.
And so, for instance, for someone like the taxi driver who I met when I first arrived, his credit union was a kind of social safety net. That access to credit enabled him to, he talked about it being a way to pay for medical care and things like that. Can you talk a bit about how the digital economy has impacted Kenyan society and, in particular, the cooperative sector? What are co-ops doing to participate in this economy? What new opportunities is it opening up for the digital economy, online economy?
Okay. Yeah. Now the cooperatives in Kenya, I think we have what we call M-Pesa. I think you have heard about M-Pesa. M-Pesa, M stands for mobile. It's like, mobile phones. And then pesa is a Kiswahili word meaning money. So it is mobile money. So the M-Pesa innovation was a big revolution in Kenya in terms of the payments and banking, because through M-Pesa, cooperatives participate also because they are also agents of M-Pesa. They get the agency so that they are able also to benefit from the commissions as well as benefit their members. And through the M-Pesa, you can deposit money through the software using your phone. You can have the money deposited in your phone. You can transfer that money to other people. You can pay your bills. And you can, if I am here, even when I'm here, I can withdraw money from my account using the M-Pesa facility and send it to my dad, who is in the rural areas in Kenya. I live in Nairobi. So it was quite a big revolution. And I think leveraging on this, cooperatives can benefit a lot from the digital economy. Yeah, from the digital economy, sorry. Yeah.
How do you think that we can start to build stronger ties across countries, especially in building a more fair, more international online economy?
Yeah, I think this can happen especially in Kenya. We have a lot of young people who have they have gone to school, they have even finished their degrees, but they are not employed. And in Kenya, the penetration of internet is quite high, in fact, compared with other countries in Africa. So there is a lot of exposure to internet by the young people. And I think they can easily be organized into cooperatives and identify areas where they can provide services. For example, you'll find that in Kenya, like online shopping, those are things that the young people can do using the digital platform, and they organize themselves and they can be able to deliver services to the communities around them. But the thing is, it has not been properly introduced. So you'll find many people, many young people are there, and they have not participated a lot in terms of generating jobs or employment for themselves. So I think that is a potential area that can be explored.
And you mentioned earlier that there are cases where credit unions are actually operating without physical locations, that online tools are enabling them to operate in places where they couldn't before.
Yes, yeah, because of the M-Pesa innovation, like I said, some of the credit unions, like I know of one of our savings and credit cooperative, is Securico Sacco. or rather the members of the circle are members of employees of security firms. So they started with one security firm, but as time goes on, they have also introduced it to others, so it has spread all over the country, in the different counties of the country. And here they have been able to recruit members, not opening branches because it is very expensive to open branches, but they are doing everything through the mobile phone. If they want to recruit new members, they have a software and an app that they have come up with. Members just register through the phones, and they do all the transactions through the phone. And if they want to borrow money, they can still borrow through their mobile phones. So they don't have to open new branches. And they have been saying that enough of waiting in the banking halls, it is enough. And they want to introduce this economy whereby you don't have to wait. You do things from your own home. You become a member, and you get all the services from your own home. And that circle has really succeeded. Now they have about 14,500 members, and they want in the next 1 year to reach 20,000 members. And the way they are moving, I can see that happening. So this is a good model, and whenever we have trainings for other cooperatives, we have been calling them to come and showcase how they are doing, so that we can also entice the other cooperatives to follow the same, because it's very convenient. It is 24/7 kind of service, and every time whatever you want to do, you can do it at your own comfort from your homes.
Finally, as we work to build a cooperative sector here, what kind of advice do you have to offer for building a healthy, sustainable cooperative ecosystem? What has enabled Kenya's cooperatives to be successful? How have you overcome the challenges that you've faced?
Thank you very much. I think one of the reasons why cooperatives in Kenya have been successful is also the institutional framework that we have built over time. For example, the savings and credit cooperatives, we already have a regulator for them because they cannot be subjected to central bank regulations because they cannot meet maybe those requirements of what the commercial banks are required to meet. So Kenya established a regulator with the advice of central bank, but it's an independent regulator to regulate the savings and credit cooperatives. And that way, people have confidence in these cooperatives because they know the regulator has introduced prudential standards that have to be observed. Therefore, they don't fear when they put their savings in the cooperatives. And that way, the cooperatives have grown very rapidly. Apart from that, we also have other institutions, like we have what we call the ethics, the Cooperatives Ethics Commission. And this commission makes sure that the leaders who are appointed or elected in cooperatives, they are ethical in their behavior. So for example, when you become a board member, you have to declare your wealth through this commission. And by the time you are completing your 3 years, then one would be able to see whether you have accumulated wealth in what did I say? Not in a legal manner or in a manner that you have really worked for it. So those kind of structures, they have helped the cooperatives to grow. We also have cooperative tribunal in Kenya, so that when cooperatives have disputes, either between cooperatives or with their members, we don't have to subject them into the court system, which sometimes can take a long time. So we have dedicated cooperative tribunals. We have appointed lawyers in those institutions, and therefore the cooperative disputes are handled quickly, and they help the cooperatives to grow and to also be satisfied. The whole thing is about trust and confidence that has made the cooperatives to grow.
Thank you so much. We have a lot of catching up to do. Please join me in thanking Professor Gicheru for sharing her experience with us. And I hope afterward you'll take some time to introduce yourself and ask questions. I'm sorry we didn't have time for them here.